Recently, I've been looking at a bunch of brands, thinking if I was the CEO for a day, what could I do to change the direction, to bring life to the brand? Thankfully, just about every brand seems to have a lever to pull. But there was a small number where I just found myself thinking, these guys are zombies. These guys aren't dying, but they're undead. They're trapped. They're mired in stasis because they've either got too much history, not enough history, the wrong kind of history. They've made decisions that have locked them in place. And as I say, they've become zombies. I'm going to run through the 5 of them today. Before I go on, something I should point out, a couple of these brands aren't bad. One of these brands is great. Some of these brands still make good watches. Some of them make terrible watches. But for whatever reason, they're just trapped in where they are. Okay, so I think the biggest of these and the brand that really got me in this mindset and thinking about this, Baume and Mercier. Baume and Mercier are trapped in that entry level segment, that part of the market that is dying and shrinking away. Can't really move up because there's a solid wall of Richemont brands above them, all of whom themselves are fighting and struggling to maintain their place. All of whom have really strong identities, really strong brand characteristics. None of that applies to Baume and Mercier. I couldn't tell you who they are. I couldn't tell you what they represent. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I couldn't find any kind of historical lever that they could pull to get out. I look at their watches, I look at their history, I look at everything about that brand, and it's just this blancmange of grey and beige. They make perfectly good watches, but that's all they ever aspire to be, and I can't see any way out. I began thinking that Baume and Mercier, perhaps you pull the lever and burn the place down and reinvent it, try and come up with some new idea, but then why bother? What would be the point? You've got to go through all the effort of building something new while at the same time trying to not remind people, trying to get people to forget what you were. Better to just turn the lights off, take that budget, and if you're Richemont, go buy Halios, go buy Brew, go buy Notice, give them budget, and then start afresh. Okay, so brand number 2 is Raymond Weis. Actually, this is going to be quick. Everything I just said about Baume and Mercier probably applies to Raymond Weis as well. They've just got no history to grab hold of and use as a rocket to get somewhere new. They've just got nothing, no great ideas, just a bunch of gimmicks that they've tried over a couple of years, appending themselves to brands and so forth, but bands, I should say, but nothing of substance that I can use as fuel to move forward. I cannot see where to go with that brand. And so they're in a worse position than Baume and Mercier because there's no corporate juggernaut that they can use to move around. I really don't know what I would do if I was in charge of them. Gotta say, I haven't put them on this list, but I fear that Maurice Lacroix could be in a similar position. Okay, so the worst brand, I think, on this list, number 3, Gucci. Gucci, or at least the watches part of it, is trapped, lonely and alone, the sole watchmaker inside the Kering Group now that Ulysse Nardin and Girard-Perregaux have been sold off. Tied to a larger name, Gucci that itself is struggling and trying to find a new path and re-establish its relevance in the 21st century. Saddled with a back catalogue of largely trash fashion watches, no obvious place to grab a new movement, a new idea. In fact, no real ability to incorporate any of that stuff within, as I said, the flailing Gucci empire. If I was CEO of Gucci watches for a day, all I could really think to do would be hold my nose, just keep on swimming and hope that tomorrow I'd forgotten that I was the CEO of the brand the day before. Okay, so number 4 on the list, Steinhardt. Quite possibly the best volume manufacturer of copies of other people's designs out there. Steinhardt do something really useful for me, like some of the Chinese brands. They show you how ubiquitous the ability to build a watch is and how rare the ability is to design a watch. And Steinhardt have been doing that for so long, I don't think they can get out of that rut. Steinhardt, it's almost, you could almost turn to Steinhardt into a verb to mean copy someone else's designs reasonably well. And I just can't see where that brand can go. I think they have got their card marked. They are a knockoff brand, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Number 5 on this list is a great brand, which has some great products. But still, I found myself thinking, I wouldn't know what to do to improve them, to take them anywhere that wouldn't break them. And that's Breguet. One of the things that's trapping so many of the previous brands in place is a lack of history, a lack of a source of fuel to drive a change. Breguet has exactly the other problem. They have plenty of history, they have plenty of great designs, but unfortunately those designs are so strong, so powerful. The legacy associated with them is so weighty, but also so narrow that, as I said, I feel like they've become so rigid, that they've become such a set crystalline lattice that any attempt to bend or twist or move Breguet is going to just shatter the organization. Having said that, perhaps for Breguet, that is no big deal, and that maybe it's okay for a brand like them to have this kind of undead existence, just plodding along, doing your thing, and just every now and then having a little moment in the sun. Because you see, the beauty about Breguet, perhaps even if it is one of these undead brands just plodding forward, is A, they are part of a big group, and B, they're at the higher echelons of that group. What that means is they're not being relied upon to drive the growth of the group. They're not being relied upon to bring new products in. They can just be their own little niche, selling to their own consistent customers for years, decades, God forbid, centuries, and it's okay. So maybe this is an interesting example of a brand which, yes, is something of a zombie, but has found its niche and does okay as a zombie. And again, maybe there's other brands in, particularly the Swatch group, that are in a similar position. I think Jacques Gros again, could be seen as a similar kind of brand, but again, because of where it is and what it does within that Swatch group, maybe it gets the freedom to just be a little undead. And maybe we should actually start thanking groups like Swatch for allowing brands like Breguet, like Jacques Gros, to just exist, to just keep plodding on and doing that one thing they do really well and not demanding that they come back to life. So anyway, there's 5 what I think are zombie brands out there at the moment. Undead, trudging forward, but seemingly unkillable. I don't know how to change those brands. If you've got an idea for what you would do to change the direction of those brands and reinvigorate them, stick it in the comments below. The good news is these were some of the only brands I looked at where I thought I couldn't imagine how you would fix them. I couldn't imagine how you would motivate them to go in a new direction. Are there any others that I didn't miss? That would be a great thing to do. You throw the challenge at me of brands that you think have totally ossified, that are completely moribund and cannot be improved. I'll take that on as a challenge, or I'll agree with you. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. Smash that like and subscribe button. There you go. I don't do that very often, but I chose to do it today. I'll see you later. Bye. 1, 2, 1, 2. Recently, I've been looking at a bunch of 1, 2, 1, 2. Recently, I've been looking at a bunch of brands, thinking if I was the CEO for a day, what could I do to change the direction, to bring